Welcome back from the news updates and the sports updates. My name is Priva Elibaz. Thank you so much for watching Sunrise at Sea. The show continues and it's right time for our Twitter jobs, yes. And today we are looking at the return of the drones and abductions in Uganda. And joining me at the start of this conversation is Agi Uwase. Good morning, Wasage.
Good morning, Priva.
I feel like I don't have any other choice rather than just to say hello once we get into studio.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. The drones are back, Agi Uwase.
Oh yes, I'm very scared. Much as I don't think I have done anything to be, taken up, to be picked up by a drone. However, I worry for so many people out there. Yesterday, when you look at social media, people are actually scared. Yes. There's actually one journalist, I will not mention their name, who was putting out a message of, putting people in a state of panic, saying, please be where you need to be at the right time, meaning if you're done with work, go home, or else you might be picked up by a drone. Why are you causing a lot of, why are you causing panic
in the public?
Yes, a senior journalist. It's very disturbing. Well, I love the fact that so many people reacted to his post and said, why are you causing panic? If anything, if any Ugandan has done wrong, why are they being picked up in a drone in the wee hours of the night? Why don't
approach them?
Yeah, approach them.
Formally.
Or maybe let the law take its course. Just like they say, I mean, Uganda, we are. No, we are almost said lawless. We're not a lawless country, but
absolutely not.
Yeah,
we're very lawful. We're
lawful.
A lawful country, yes. And still speaking about it, of course, it's very unfortunate. People are really, really scared that the drones are back. And actually, Mr. Bobi Wine called upon his supporters to avoid opening the doors to strangers, avoid answering calls, or at least have some airtime before they sleep in case they're attacked in the night. They have some ways of connecting with their counterparts, which is really unfortunate because we don't have to.
Exactly, we don't have to live like
this,
that.
Where police no longer comes to your doorstep, or any security organ comes to your doorstep and says, you know what, this is my identification, this is who I am, you've committed crime X, Y, and Z, and this is why we are taking you into custody. Yes. And of which, even if you get to custody, 48 hours should not elapse before produce these people before the courts of law.
Yeah, I mean, we're living in the 21st, we are still in the 21st century, right? Yes. Why are we still suffering like this? Why do I have to be, on my guard and on my toes every minute, get to my home and then close because I'm afraid anytime, a drone could happen to me up.
Yes.
Yeah, just like you mentioned, it's very unfortunate, for this country. But yeah, let's see how this goes.
Absolutely. Well, still looking at the conversation of the return of drones and abductions, we see that the opposition party, that is the National Unity Platform, did come out and allege that the security forces have abducted more than 14, actually they abducted 15 people of their supporters, and of course this resurrects the memories of what happened back in last year, actually before the presidential elections and during the presidential elections, as well as after the presidential elections.
Yes.
Now these 15 people were actually profiled by Mr. Chagulanyi Robert Sentam, also known as Bobi Wine, on his social media platforms on Monday, and basically he was using the hashtag Bring Back Our People, and he was asking the question, where are they? Yes. And if you look at it, these are young people. These are not like old people. These are these are youths, if I should put it that way. They're youths, and their life has been compromised, if I should put it that way, because of their political affiliation and something to do with that, at least according to the National Unity Platform. But like I mentioned earlier on, we see that the Information Minister, Dr. Chris Baryomunsi, as well as the spokespersons for the police, as well as the military, all in separate interviews said they know nothing about these particular abductions. But what the question I think that I have to that I'm still struggling with is that it's okay for people to be arrested. I understand it can happen anytime, but 2 years becomes unreasonable. If someone has been held incommunicado for 2 years and they haven't been produced before the courts of law, to me as a lawyer, as someone who has enlightened myself when it comes to the laws of Uganda, I find that very unfortunate, because not only are you depriving them of their personal liberty, you're actually encroaching on their constitutional rights.
Yes,
you still have the right to freedom. Yes.
So, but I think Uganda as a country, let me make this really bold statement that I didn't want to make earlier. We're not a lawless country, but we're not actually constitutional, if I should say that. Because even if you look at the people who have been, arrested legally, the two honorables, Segirinya and Sewanyana, it's been a year. And they've been, in Muzira prison until this day. They haven't, they haven't had. Okay, yes, they always hear hearing of their cases, but it's always adjourned. It's always, every other time. Until this day, they haven't had, proper hearing of their case and, their judgment. If let's say they say you're going to serve 10 years in prison, yes, at least make that proper judgment. Why do you have to keep someone in prison before, they get the justice that they need, before you actually hear their case? So even for these people who are being abducted every other day, yesterday I was actually reading a story of social media, and someone said, and I will just read it out the way it was very heartbreaking. That's why I'm speaking like this. They said, yes, they said, I was forced to urinate in naked electric cables and got electrocuted. For me to avoid this horror, I had to drink my own urine so that I could reduce the number of times I went to urinate.
The toilet.
Now, these are very heartbreaking narrations of, the victims of these drones and these abductions. However, I don't understand why government, or the people in government, Minister Chris Bariomonsi alongside others, who come out to deny these allegations that they're not abducting anyone, they're not torturing anyone. So who tortures these people? Absolutely. The police says they're not doing this, the army says they're not doing this, SFC says they're not doing this, the state says they're not doing this. So who is doing this to our people? Honestly, that's the question.
And still speaking on the how would I call it, the situation that you just described right now.
Yeah.
It was actually a supporter, an NUP supporter called Mr. Moses Bukenya, also known as Wiser. Yes,
Yeah.
This was a 22-year-old, yes, abducted, taken just like that. A drone comes and picks you up and just speeds off. And he was in prison since 2020, yes, and but he was released actually from Chitalia prison on August 23rd. And he actually told the Daily Monitor that he spent 21 months incarcerated at different places, and among them he mentioned the Makindye Military Police, and he also mentioned an ungazetted detention facility.
Yeah.
And he said that ununiformed men abducted him from Zambia Sharing Hall, which is in Zambia, just a Kampala suburb. But he says upon his abduction, he was dragged into the drone that was waiting for him. It sped off, and no one heard from him. And he said at some point, his family members actually lost hope and in fact held a funeral service for him because they did not think he was going to come back at any time. Yes.
Yeah.
So these are things that real families are experiencing. Victims, because I know people on social media, some were saying, if you haven't done anything wrong, why should you be scared about the drones? But others were saying, you say these things, you make these statements until it is someone that you know, or someone that is closely related to you that has been put in a particular position like this.
Yeah, and I also think by doing this, they are trying to put Ugandans in a state of fear, because when you see some of the people who have been abducted before, they're these people who are always speaking their mind on social media, putting it out there the way it is, So also some of them have got, calls, and the numbers that usually call these people are South Sudanese numbers and then Kenyan numbers. You can imagine how, these things are very appalling, to be very honest. So you're getting threats because of freedom of speech. Now, I would think they're trying to instill fear in Ugandans so that, you do not speak ill of, the head of state and, the other people, prominent people in this country.
But the question that is being asked by different people is that, this is somehow affecting only a section of people, and which happens to be the National Unity Platform. We have other political parties. We have the Forum for Democratic Change. This has been opposition. It was at one point the biggest opposition party in Uganda. But we never had these things happen. Yes, we had the arbitrary arrests, being arrested and taken somewhere for some days without being produced before courts of law. But that would somehow dissolve, and people attain their freedom at a certain point. At a later point, at least that would happen.
I don't know why they're targeting why is it NUP? Why is it NUP? But I remember there's a certain person who made a very bold statement on social media and said, we are going to finish you. We are going to finish you. And of course, and people were asking a question like, who are you to say you're going to finish us? This is our country. Where do you want Ugandans to run to? If we cannot speak, if we cannot have freedom of speech, if we cannot, because if you look at the fact that even Bobby Wine or, Kyagulanyi Robert Sentamu, the fact that during presidential campaigns, he had to wear a bulletproof jacket, because he was afraid or scared for his life, that alone is very disturbing. You are supposed to be as free as you can be, just like, well, we don't know about other presidents because we have not seen pictures of them wearing bulletproof jackets. But back in the day, Dr. Kizza Besigye, we never saw him with a bulletproof jacket. We didn't see, Mugisha Muntu with that same bulletproof jacket. So yes, I understand why they say they are targeting a section of the opposition, and that is the National Unity Platform. But the question is why?
Exactly. As we examine, what do you think would be the possible reasons? Because earlier this week still was speaking on, what the pressure that NUP has come with. Because number one, they're frustrated with the EACOP project, yes, because of their protests in Netherlands and saying, you know what, this is unacceptable. Here you are trying to not to incorporate, but trying to how would I call it? Try to work on a project, yes? You're trying to work on a project where in a country where there's gross violation of human rights, you're trying to work on a project and, there could be environmental factors that could pose a hazard to, the general population. Yeah. And you know what the EU Parliament had to, resolve and advise the government of Uganda to do. That was one of the, the situations. We had the situation of this iPod? The iPod, yes. The iPod where the biggest financiers and the funders had to pull out because NUP still striked and their protesters said basically this is not inclusive if it is not going to involve the biggest opposition political party in Uganda at the moment. Yes, I remember there's a section of people from the NRM party who say that NUP is not a threat. But according to what you have, presented to us, it seems they're actually a threat to them. So maybe that's why people are being abducted and, we never get to see them. But for me, it's very heartbreaking to see these stories because these Ugandans have children, they have families to take care of, they have tuition to pay for their children. So imagine your father is kidnapped and you never get to see them ever again. At least if they are arraigned in courts of law. Yes. And then there, yes, my father is in prison. Like I know where he is, but you do not. You don't know whether they are dead, you don't know whether they're alive, you don't know whether they were, I don't know whether they're out of this country. It's very disturbing, I must say. And yeah, we remember this all started in remember the Arua saga. Yes, even before that. Even before that, but that's what really made it. That's when it started getting worse. That's when they started the rampant abductions of Ugandans and national. Arrests. Yeah, that's where it's not abductions. Hundreds of NUP supporters were arrested. Yeah, but after that time, then the abduction started of Jones, and then it's abductions. Let's say it the way it is. It's quite absurd. Yeah. Well, we see that actually since last year, hundreds of Ugandans, mostly who are members of the National Unity Platform, have allegedly been abducted, tortured, and detained incommunicado in ungazetted places. And actually, some have been arraigned before court martials, the court martial on different charges. But others have been dumped in swamps and forests in the middle of the night, allegedly. And almost those who have been dumped or released have clear signs of actually what appears to be torture or abuse. And the torture is actually both mental and actually physical at the end of it all, because when people get out there and they're telling their stories and you see the physical injuries, it's not a nice sight. Yeah. Now, what was actually interesting about this is that remember back in the day, they released the list of the NUP supporters who had been apparently abducted and were actually missing persons. Yeah. Well, the government actually conceded to knowing that a certain section of NUP supporters were actually in their custody. Their numbers were not tallying. Yeah. Opposition had a different number of the people they believed were in custody, while the government came out and said we have a different number of people. And actually, Afande Felix Kulayija said those people were actually arraigned before court. Yes, they were arraigned before court, and he says those other people that they are referring to, the latest incidents and all that, he has absolutely zero knowledge about these particular abductions. And that's where the challenge comes in, because these are people who swore an oath to protect the lives of Ugandans, to guard Ugandans. So if you do not know about the whereabouts of people who are probably, because sometimes people actually get this footage on camera, and you see, you see the drones are not really abducting people, but people actually see these things happening. So if as the army and as police, you do not know where these people are, whom they claim you're the same people that abducted them. So it doesn't, just like you said, it doesn't make sense at all. And just like I said earlier, it's very heartbreaking. Yeah, pretty much unfortunate. Well, we'll be giving you some more information, but let's dive back into the tweets. And our first tweet comes in from Bobby Wine, who is also the party president of the NUP, and it says, the drones are back. Thanks for raising awareness at Daily Monitor. These past 3 weeks, 15 of our people have been abducted by state operatives. Most are still missing. Others were brought to court days or weeks later, limping as a result of grave torture. Hashtag bring back our people. I hope they bring them back in one piece, though. Our next tweet comes from Nicholas Opio, and it says, this Yes, the macabre it is, yes.
Acts are being carried out by a small group of trained for purpose individuals. The president called them my commandos, but in the shadowy intelligence agency, they are known as warriors. They number about 150 individuals, mostly male, trained from Nakasongola. Now, these are not even army officers.
Yes.
These are not even police officers who are taking part in these, abductions of our people.
These are specifically trained to handle this particular operation.
You can imagine the amount of torture that people have to go through at their hands.
Totally agree. Well, the next tweet comes in from David Ruongoya, and it says, "Thank you, Daily Monitor, for highlighting the new wave of abductions in our country. Very unfortunate this has been turned into a new normal. No one can be free until all of us are free. Hashtag free Uganda. Hashtag bring back our people. Hashtag free all political prisoners in Uganda."
Well, yes, next tweet comes from Dan Wandera Ogalo, and it says, "I was forced to urinate in a naked electric cable and got electrocuted. Okay, for me, to avoid this horror, I had to drink my own urine so that I could reduce the number of times I went to urinate," says a man who spent 21 months held in Communicado and still walk with our heads high. Well, I love the courage, but I think more than ever, civil society organizations and human rights organizations should come out openly and criticize this kind of torture on Ugandans. I know some of them, some of our people and these organizations and non-government organizations are very scared to call out openly the state and call out these abductions, because I mean, they're scared that their licenses could be revoked or anything. But then again, why do you brand yourself as a human rights, ambassador, as a human rights organization, and you're not doing the needful?
Actually, even before I get to blaming the non-government organizations, I must blame the government, number one, because when you look at Uganda, it ratified the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, that is the ICC statute. Now, in that particular statute, the ICC has jurisdictions over 4 crimes. We have genocide, there's war crimes, there's crimes against humanity, as well as aggression. Now, in 2010, the Ugandan Parliament particularly passed, or ratified the International Criminal Court Act. And this act basically domesticates the ICC statute, and Section 8 provides for the crimes against humanity and actually refers to Article 7 of the ICC statute for the definition of these crimes. When you look at the definition of torture and forced disappearance of people, you see that torture is defined to mean the intentional infliction of severe pain or suffering, whether physical or mental, and upon a person in the custody or under the control of the accused. Then the same Article 7 goes ahead to define a forced disappearance to mean the arrest, the detention, or abduction of persons by or with authorization, support, or acquiescence of a state or political organization, followed by a refusal to acknowledge the deprivation, that's the word, yes, of freedom, or to give information on the fate or whereabouts of those persons with the intention of removing them from the protection of the law for a prolonged period of time. Now, when you look at the mistreatment to which the NUP, that is the National Unity Platform members, have been subjected to, it's quite contrary to what to the acts that Uganda has actually ratified. Here we are saying, yes, we're going to respect the rights of people. We're not going to commit crimes against humanity. There's not going to be aggression or anything like that. But then now we have NUP members who have been subjected to amounts of, crime against humanity. Yes, we have the issues of torture. We have the forced disappearance, and all these are crimes that we've, highlighted that are happening to the NUP members. So before we actually blame the non-government organizations that are here maybe to do some other work, let's first hold our government accountable.
Yes, I mean, but we are always calling them out even on social media. Well, I haven't personally done that, but I'm doing it now. But then the same people who are always calling them out on social media are the same people who are scared for their lives that they're going to be abducted the same night they put out a tweet. So you don't even have freedom of expression. You cannot even demand for the people to be, released, or, for people to see their people. So we are living in a state of fear and panic. I mean, I could be here, I don't know. It could come from me.
No, honestly, I need the government to come out with a formal statement. And actually, I do associate myself with the words of Honorable Odongo, to the former Arua County Member of Parliament. He said, as these things are actually going on, when the government stays quiet, it makes things worse. Because they have the mandate to protect its citizens. They have the mandate to do the right thing, which is making sure all Ugandans are safe. I mean, the president, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, His Excellency, always speaks about security in the country.
Yeah.
I don't know if this
how
actually
the
compromises
country is safe.
How this compromises the, the security that he keeps talking about.
There's a lot of hypocrisy because we even do have a Human Rights Commission of Parliament. But I remember back in May 2022, some members of Parliament on the Human Rights Committee took this particular issue of drones and, were asking for answers. Now, Jacob Oboth, and that is the State Minister for Defense and General Duties, dismissed the allegations of kidnappings, saying drones are not part of the modus operandi of the chieftaincy of the military intelligence, which means whoever is doing this is not even doing it or operating it under the law. They have no idea who it is. So by the time a state minister for general duties comes on to say, I mean, these are the people that we expect answers from. So they're saying they have no idea who these people are that are abducting people.
Well, so I agree with you.
How else would we get?
Yes, I agree with you. And still, even if it's still alleged, whether it's still a point of discussion. We don't know whether the government is doing it or not doing it. That's why we are calling them allegations. But regardless of that, the government has to come out with a firm stand on what is actually happening, and show us their side. Speak up on this, and give a complete position on where they stand.
I don't think it will change. I think they have already made their stand. Maybe they will re-emphasize the stand of saying we have no idea who is, these are all allegations. I mean, how many state ministers have come on to say that? Chris Baromasi recently said it, and they keep on re-echoing it. Everyone in government says they have no idea.
Everyone says they don't know.
Do you think we shall get a different answer after all?
Yes, because even actually, Afandi Felix Kula just said maybe they should consult the CMI, and the CMI is saying, but listen, we don't even have any gazetted area to hold people, so we know nothing about what you're talking about. Well, the next tweet comes in from Ronald Evans Kanyike, and it says, after the brutality of the 2021 polls, the plight of those who have vanished after being abducted by state operatives and now more abductions are a tragedy that continues in Uganda. The NRA junta won't succeed in breaking the back of the NUP revolution. Hashtag bring back our people.
Oh yes, our next tweet comes from Pageant Kintu, and it says, but your members of parliament are busy eating cash with the abductors. At what point does one realize their lives or the lives of their supporters are more important than that cash and its packs of meaningless power? When the people supported you, did you have that cash? You're becoming a typical opposition. I think they're responding, to one of the tweets. But I'll just say one thing: humanity is selfish. You know that, right? Very selfish. Inherently selfish and evil. So yes, for you to say, I mean, you don't mind about, well, there's those MPs who really, I will say, care about their supporters, and they've come out openly, especially from the opposition, to condemn these abductions and also ask for, the people that have been abducted to be, brought back to the public. But yeah, there's a section of others, especially from the ruling party, who couldn't care less about what is happening to you for as long as they are okay and their families are.
Absolutely, but this is a typical.
And some even defending.
I see where Paget Kintu is going with this. At the end of the day, politicians are being very selfish in a time like this, where they should be fighting for the rights of Ugandans, but choose to advance their selfish intentions. Well, the next tweet comes in from Bobby Wine, and it says, Damulira had 10 children and 2 wives at the time of his abduction. He was their sole breadwinner. The family and our legal teams have moved all prisons looking for him. A court order for his release was issued and ignored. The regime wants to lecture us about patriotism. I totally agree with him. I side with this. This is purely infringing on, people's constitutional rights. You're infringing on their rights to freedom, their right to personal liberty,
free and fair
their right to a free and fair hearing, the right to, a presumption of innocence before you're actually, declared guilty by the courts of law. Like, there is so much that is being, violated when it comes to the abductions that are happening to the National Unity Platform members.
Yeah, it's very disturbing. Well, our next tweet comes from Wilfred Businge, and it says, for the last 1 week, Bobby Wine has been profiling NUP supporters who were abducted by security operatives months ago. Some close to 2 years without trace. These were their children, husbands, fathers, friends, and guardians, wondering why people celebrate the death of the tormentors. Now, she's referring to the fact that most recently, when we see, especially people who have been either in the military or, in government, when they pass on, people are actually celebrating on social media. Yeah,
quite absurd. I would never.
Yeah, it's really absurd. You wouldn't do
way.
that. It's very it's they say fire doesn't put out fire, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I
only
still
right
condemn
puts
that.
out wrong. So this is very bad to do. But I think they can bring up a better way that you can ask, a better approach, how you can ask, you know, for your people to be released. There's a certain person on social media who actually called them dungeons. You can imagine. If you watched Game of Thrones, you saw those dungeons?
Yes, I did.
Exactly. So I can imagine that darkness, that torture. You don't know, you know, where
confusion.
Chiboko is coming from.
Not Chiboko, where Chiboko is coming from. Well, we still see that with the 15 people that were recently abducted, according to the National Unity Platform, 6 of these were arrested in the past 3 weeks alone, and these included Bashir Kasaga. There is also actually, Bashir Kasaga, who was picked up by armed men wearing uniform, what looked like actually the UPDF uniform, and he was actually picked on September 6th. And then there's also Jakana Naduli, who is the son of a former minister, Abdul Nanduli. Then we have Teddy Nalubowa, who is a business woman, and we also have a journalist who is Kenneth Kavulu of the Uganda Broadcasting Service, that is the BBS. And actually, these were produced before in military and civilian courts, where they were charged with, among others, incitement to violence and being in possession with the government military items. Now, the whereabouts of Mr. Hussein Kato Gaza and Mr. Abbas Semakula who are picked separately from their homes by gun-wielding and ununiformed men, they remain unknown. They don't know where these people are, who have been abducted, and I think that wraps up the latest incident that actually happened to the families of Mr. Gaza and Mr. Semakula. These were also thrown into a waiting drone and just sped off, and actually a week has lapsed since their arrest and no one knows what's actually going on with them. And actually the NUP deputy spokesperson yesterday, that is Alex Mufumbiro, said that many of their supporters continue to be abducted and taken to different safe houses. He says the government can deny all these, but history will always judge them for their inconsistencies.
I think I'm tired of that word.
History judging them?
Yes. I mean, we cannot live by history judging us at the end of the day. I mean, people are suffering, people are dying. When shall we wait until history, you know, judges them? Maybe it will never judge them. If you've heard the saying about karma, karma is actually a scam, I might think. You might think that because, you know, someone is torturing you, they will have to go through some hell of a life at some point in life, and it may never happen. Well, also adding on what Priva has said, Mr. Waiso Mfumbiro Alex also said that their legal teams have been traversing the country seeking information on the whereabouts of the missing members. Now, he added that they suspect that they are being held at CMI, but they know all this can end only when there is a change in government. He further went on to note that our supporters are not safe because they are those that were abducted 2 years ago and have never been seen by their families. Yes, it's quite as sad as that. Sad. And he also said that as they register 7 new cases of the state-engineered abductions, all political activists need to take some precautions. Try to have airtime all the time. I think that is something that you mentioned earlier that I shouldn't repeat. But also, I will say that this shouldn't be the way that we live. Taking precautionary measures. Yeah, every time there's a function in this country, they're talking about peace. We brought peace, we brought tranquility. I mean, Uganda is safe. How safe is it if people have to have airtime for in case of eventualities? And we're not talking about maybe your child is sick in the night and you need to take them to hospital. We are talking about any minute there could be a drone at your doorstep coming to pick you up. Yeah, and then you say Uganda is safe. It doesn't make sense at all. I see the inconsistencies. I see where they're coming from. Because when you remember, in a letter that was dated February 23rd from the president of Uganda, actually, he noted that the security situation in the country and the alleged disappearance of citizens, like he noted, he took note of all those things, but he said at the end of the day, they're helping us, you know, give us more information on what's happening and how to, you know, how would I call it, control or check these various groups that are causing a lot of disorganization in the country. Well, the next tweet comes in from Teso's Finest, and it says, Comrade Sentamu John was abducted last month by security operatives who tortured him and forced him to plead guilty over a tweet he allegedly made against the Right Honorable Speaker of Parliament, that is Anita Among. Hashtag bring back our people. Well, the next tweet comes from Eddie Mutu, and it says, it's another day to look for our people. The dictator is not resting. Hashtag stop kidnapping our people. Where are they? You know, and all other hashtags. It's another day to look for our people. I mean, I will just say one thing. You know, we are always trying, okay, the people from our past. I remember even our mother, you know, telling us about the Idi Amin regime and how people used to hide whenever you'd see like an army truck or something. You would have to be in your house by probably 6 p.m. because of abductions, because of torture, because of killing of Ugandans. And you know, they're always trying to taint that very bad picture of that regime. I mean, those are the same regimes that the current government, you know, fought against, you know, to bring peace to Ugandans. But if we are doing the same things that we are fighting that time, or even worse,
I think
what did we fight
we're
for?
probably doing worse.
Yes,
but
only that it's low-key,
dignified, not even dignified. This is really not dignified in any way. But you remember, yes, still speaking of the Idi Amin regime, remember the Archbishop of the Church of Uganda province, the Rwanda, Burundi, and Boga Zaire between 1974 and 1977. That is Archbishop Janan Luwom. He was actually murdered on the orders of President Idi Amin. Yes. But of course, they put out a formal statement from government and they said, you know, he died in an accident, but people knew already what had already happened. So it's quite absurd that even as we commemorate the death of, you know, people like Archbishop Janan Luwom, that we learn nothing. It's
even
like we celebrate this
the other day. I think it was last week. Yes,
we commemorate these days every single year, but we learn nothing from them. Because if we're going to speak about the spate of killings that started way as back as the 1970s during the regime of Idi Amin, and here we are several years later still handling the same things the same way.
I don't know if they think it's different. Because speaking of Bishop Janan Luwom, speaking of you know, the former Chief Justice Benedicto Chiwanuka, who also, you know, died the same way. And you know, the president was giving a speech that day, and of course he was talking about peace, and then he was also telling the judiciary in Uganda that it's not yet time for them to seek a free or independent judicial system. I don't know how, you know, I looked at that and I'm like, what do you mean? Why shouldn't the judiciary be independent? If anything, it's supposed to be an independent arm of government, right?
It's basically letting you know that all the three arms of government are not independent. At the end of the day, the executive stays the executive. So if you're the judiciary or the parliament law-making body, it doesn't matter. And the final decision lies with the fountain of honor.
Exactly. And this is the same arm of government. Yes, this is the same arm of government that's supposed, you know, to fight for the rights of people, you know, courts of law and all that. But if they are not independent, then it won't work out. And also on the same note, if again we are, I mean, there's a lot of hypocrisy, like I said. You're attending a Benedicto Chiwanuka, you know, day, commemoration day, and then you don't want the judiciary to be independent. These are the things that Benedicto Chiwanuka was fighting for. And then Ugandans are being abducted, and even the courts of law are not free. It's just a repeat of all the bad things that happened back in the day when I was not alive, when you're not alive. But it's just like you mentioned, history is repeating itself. If anything, worse.
Worse is the word. It's getting worse.
Yeah, worse.
Yes. Well, but still, I'll bring back the conversation to some of, you know, the organizations or entities that have come out to say, no, this has to stop. We have the Uganda Law Society, and actually the lawyers employed security agencies not too long ago to ensure all those who have been held in detention beyond 48 hours are allowed by the Constitution to be released, yes? And then they also recommended that those who have committed offenses and there is evidence, they should also be charged in courts of law, because everyone is entitled to a speedy hearing. Then also the Uganda Law Society also asked security agencies to immediately release the list of all those who were abducted and the areas in which they are held. And then they also want security officers who have killed, tortured or abducted citizens to be prosecuted and are held individually liable. You know how these security organs normally hide under the umbrella of I'm working for police, so if I commit a crime, maybe the police is going to be vicariously liable for my own actions. So but the Uganda Law Society is saying no, come out and be held individually liable for the atrocities that you've committed against the people of Uganda. And I think that's one thing that we haven't seen happen. All these people that are carrying out the abductions, even when we take it back to the 2020 November protests, none of them has been brought to book. People died, over 56 people died.
And they know that.
Life is like, life has moved on. People are still grieving, people are still suffering, but the perpetrators have never been brought to book.
And maybe, well, I hope they are brought to book at some point. I remember, you know, sometimes the NUP party usually puts out the pictures of those, you know, some of the perpetrators that they have caught on camera. And, you know, it's like the state is not seeing these things at all. Because if you say, oh, we don't know who is abducting the people, and the people are showing you the people who are abducting the people, then why shouldn't you bring them to book? That can only mean one thing, that they have, or they are being protected by a higher authority or power.
But let me ask you something.
They have it.
Yes, let me ask you something. The National Unity Platform, clearly we see the approach that it is taking. Let's protest. Let's influence the Western world and let them know that actually what is happening here does not need to be happening when it comes to aid, when it comes to all those things. And basically, they say they have to weaken President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, but since they cannot do it here in Uganda, they're going to do it by making sure they frustrate whatever is going on between Uganda and the Western world. Do you think they'll be able to achieve that?
I wouldn't know.
Because EarPod is down, we have also the iPod still also, you know, they're hanging in balance. So
they may not entirely frustrate everything, but they will actually frustrate something. And that's why we are talking of the return of what? Of drones.
Yes.
Because I remember I was actually seeing where people are saying, why don't you go to courts of law instead of, you know, bringing it to social media? But they have been to the courts of law, and the courts of law are not doing anything. If those who are actually in prison, and every other time they are arraigned in courts of law, they keep on adjourning their cases. It's been over a year, and other people it's been about 2 years. You can imagine. So if the courts of law are not doing their work, if they're not independent, let them take to social media. Social media is a very, very powerful platform. We have seen it, you know, kickstart so many revolutions.
Absolutely.
The Black Lives Movement, you know, after the death of George Floyd, among other black people. So yes, it's a very powerful instrument,
that
believe
can
it
drive,
or not.
yes, can drive revolution in one way or another. Well, the next tweet comes in from Bremi Bahati, and she says, as a journalist who has been tortured from these dawns by goons dressed as cops, I can say it's not a pleasant experience. It's awful, and everyone should worry. The next tweet comes in from Kanyomozi district, and it says, cowards hiding behind the might of the gun to cause untold suffering to innocent Ugandans. Despicable. Hashtag bring back our people.
Well, the next tweet comes from Makere's Finest, and it says, drones are for criminals. If you haven't committed any crimes, why should you be afraid? Are you kidding? You see,
No, he actually has a very valid
valid point.
Yes,
ideally, yes, that's what it should be. But like you mentioned earlier, if I've committed a crime, police has to come identify itself and then, you know, tell me why I'm being arrested, why I'm, you know, what crime I've committed, and why am I being taken into custody. But these people are never told. If anything, they are handcuffed, and then they are, you know, blindfolded. They never know how, you know, they get into the drone and how they get to their destination. Sometimes, well, the stories we have had, some people get there when they're unconscious. They have no idea where they are. So if you say, if you haven't committed any crime, why should you be afraid? If we are seeing all these tragic stories on social media, people coming back from, you know, their detention facilities, it's not even a facility, and they come on and narrate those horrific stories. We've seen pictures of, you know, wounds, and it's so disturbing. But when we see those stories, then Ugandans should actually be very much worried. Yes, because right now it's like you're not sure. You could put out a post on social media and you're thinking you're, you know, exercising your right of, you know, freedom of speech, and it rubs the perpetrators the wrong way, and before you know it, the drone is right at your doorstep, or, you know, at your office to pick you up.
But again, let's talk about the court system. We've been talking about the judiciary and saying, you know, it's not independent. Do you think maybe there could be other, you know, underlying factors? Because I'm sure right now we are struggling with case backlog. There is a lot of cases, yet we don't have a sizable number of magistrates and judges and, you know, justices. So here we are, handling so much with a limited human resource, if I should put it that way. But then
I will not even say there's limited human resource.
It is. It's actually very limited. And
it's
actually
limited.
I think they should actually be coming up with new court circuits all over the country, so that you know, they can speed up some of these things. Because I understand how many people have so far been abducted by allegedly abducted by the government, as claimed by the National Unity Platform. There are over 1,000 of their supporters. So if all these people are supposed to be arraigned before Buganda Road Court,
do you even think the reason I think
we need to actually pay attention to the judiciary. Yes, pay attention to it. Increase the courts all over the country. Get more magistrates on board as well. I know they may not have the jurisdiction to handle some of these matters, but at least they'll, you know, speed up some of these processes, so that maybe we don't have to keep blaming the judiciary and talking about how it is, you know, not independent and what, when we have not given them maybe like a fair chance.
I remember Chief Justice Alphonse Owiny-Dollo actually talked about that, how, you know, the judiciary is lacking when it comes to magistrates, you know, and, you know, lawyers. But then the reason I'm saying let's not hide under the mask of, you know, saying that there's no human resource, inadequate human resource, because even when there is human resource, I will just, the same example, I'll give it to you the third time. Honorable Mohamed Seginya, yes. Honorable Alan Sewanyana, they are always arraigned in courts of law. Today they adjourn, okay, after 3 weeks, come back to court. After 3 weeks, why are they delaying this case?
And by now, by their bail should have been mandatory.
Exactly, by now, either they could have, you know, the judgment could have been done already. But like I mentioned earlier, and just like the president of this country made that statement and said, this is not the time the judiciary should even seek to be independent. You can imagine. So it means there's still a higher authority, there's still an arm that the judiciary is under, much as it's supposed to be, you know, independent. So even when the magistrates are there, I think they get orders.
Yes.
They get orders from above, either to delay the case. I don't know, I will not, these are still allegations that are out there. So yes, inadequate human resource shouldn't really be an excuse.
I could fall
let them first work on the pertinent issues and then they will know, okay, I think it's the lack of human resource.
But then also I think some of our judicial officers actually also being corrupted. It's
exactly.
not an allegation, but if anyone was to do some kind of investigative journalism and, you know, figure out how these things are handled in court, you'd be very disappointed. Judicial officers are being compromised highly and receiving bribes and all
they
that.
Can't stand their ground. That's a very sad reality.
Yes. Well, the next tweet comes in from Peter Ekakoro, and he was replying to what the President of Uganda, His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, posted, and he said, I engaged with the family members of the late Chief Justice Benedicto Chiwanuka at State House in Entebbe this afternoon. I pledged my total support to the family in their endeavors to celebrate Chiwanuka's legacy through memorial projects and programs. Well, Peter Ekakoro went on to say, it would be great to engage with all the families of Ugandans who are missing and no one knows their whereabouts. They were last seen being picked up by armed men in numberless cars, exactly what you say you fought against.
Hypocrisy taking, you know, its course. But honestly, I really wish that this can change. I don't know how, I don't know what steps it will, you know, should be taken for it to change. If the courts of law are not doing their work, and these are the people we are supposed to run to. I mean, if you are in a state of, if you have an emergency or, you know, a state of insecurity, you're supposed to run to police. Yes. You're supposed to run the army, no, not really, police, and then the courts of law. But we cannot even run to them. You cannot go to police and say they abducted my person. Who abducted your person? You're not even sure if these are not the people that are doing this, you know, committing these crimes. And then the courts of law also, they are not doing anything. So I don't know whether social media will be a very powerful instrument, you know, to push this, and eventually that people get their people back. We get to have our people back, and, you know, put an end to these abductions and tortures and drones. I mean, drones initially were beautiful cars that people would even that would buy, especially
to begin with.
Super
we only
custom,
thought
exactly.
them to be, you know, aircraft supposed to bring in cargo or anything like that.
But
we never
now,
thought. There was actually a time where they assembled a couple of drones and they wanted it to bring in something in the country. I forget what the drones were meant to bring into the country. But yeah, it was supposed to act in that way. So that's how we understood drones to be until, you know, the abductions.
And now we are super scared of these. Some are actually really beautiful cars. I remember there's a time we're coming from Entebbe, and there's this gentleman who is driving a drone. I was with my sister, and he said, oh, we're coming from the same place. It's like, I'm heading to Kampala. Can you come with me? And we're like, a drone? I mean, we're actually from Praia, as you can imagine, but we had to rethink that decision because we weren't sure. I mean, this looks like a drone, right? And it had a government number plate that made it worse. But yeah, this only shows how we are in a state of insecurity, panic, and trauma as well. I mean, when you get to see these pictures on social media, for me, every time I see them, I can only imagine how much pain these people have had to go through. And yes, just like one of them mentioned, and then they come back and still hold their heads high.
Life has to go on.
Takes a lot
somehow.
of courage. Yeah. Well, and some are not even compensated. But who gets to compensate them anyway?
No, wait, well, if it is a wrongful arrest, you could actually sue the government, but of course you sue through the attorney. You sue the attorney general. You could sue the attorney general by the way for compensation. You could take it to court if you believe you were arrested wrongfully and it was an illegal and arbitrary arrest. You've been detained for longer than you should have been detained. Your rights were infringed. And if you get a good human rights lawyer, they should be able, you know, to represent. And yeah, you could get some compensation because actually they do pay some people in different I mean,
I think they're selective.
They always
They're
pay
selective
costs
with
when
who
they
they
lose
pay.
cases, so compensation should also not be
They're selective
a
with who
different
they
case.
pay. I want to, it's sad, but I would want to say that I think I'm almost losing all confidence in our judicial system.
No, I think there's a couple of things that they can do. Number one, for the police, I would say a lot has to be done to our police officers because you realize not many of them know what they're dealing with. Not many of them understand the law.
Yeah.
Yes? Not many of them understand what is supposed to happen. So I think as we, you know, try to streamline a couple of things to make sure these unfortunate incidents no longer happen in our country, we need to start with the police. They need to understand what they're dealing with to begin with. If anything, if we have to buy every police officer the Constitution of Uganda, let's do that. If we have to buy them the Police Act so that they can understand their duties to the common Ugandan, they should get them the Police Act, every single police officer, so that they all understand what they actually supposed to do in regard to their job description. When we get to the judiciary, I think it's actually being compromised, but then still we could do better starting from within. I know everyone says lawyers are very shrewd and all that.
You want money.
Yeah, it's like it's like money is talking volumes when it comes to the judiciary. But I think still maybe we could handle that by being patriotic enough, but also enforcing strict measures as a result of, you know, the consequences of people, you know, accepting bribes and the corruption and all that. If you're compromised, you face, you know, the law, and like there should be stringent measures so that, you know, if Aggie accepts any 2 million bribe, she could lose her job. She could no longer be the resident state attorney. She could no longer be this and that. Like those should be
in which Uganda
implemented so that, you know, we handle some of these things.
Ideally, I will use Shivan's phrase of that's
the ideal.
The ideal, but it's not the reality.
Yeah.
Because even their top bosses, you know, are also doing the same thing. Our Chief Justice, right? Not Chief Justice, but the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs is Honorable Norbert Mao. And as we all know, you know, DP. Well, he still claims he's DP, but I think he's more of NRM at the moment as we speak. So yes, just look at the entire judicial system from, you know, the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, look at the Chief Justice of Uganda, look at the entire judicial system, especially the topmost leadership. Very much compromised.
Compromised so because they're being appointed by the Fountain of Honor. So you can see where, you know, so how it plays into that as well.
This common Ugandan like myself really attain the justice that I need? If the whole system is compromised. And speaking about police officers, yes, they need the constitution, they need all those things. Even they need to be trained, absolutely.
It's more of, you know, understanding what they're actually doing.
Yeah, and even the training is very important. But they're also claiming they are not the ones abducting the people. People are saying CMI, people are saying SFC. So,
and all these are organs that have come out and said, no, we have no idea about what you're talking about. Even when the president said earlier in the year that actually they had about 51. Was it last year they had 51 people in custody with the SFC. I hope they got the information, because at the end of the day he said they were trying, you know, to get information and, you know, extract that information from them that would, you know, benefit the rest of Ugandans. I hope they did get that information.
I hope it works, and I hope this time, once and for all, an end is put to these abductions. We don't want this story to be recurring. Human rights abuse. That's what. Remember when we were having this conversation on the ECOP, and you said, "Oh my God, like NUP is bringing in, is bringing in the conversation of human rights." You know, but it's very important.
It was very strategic. It was very timely.
Yes,
that's
timely.
what I think I was trying to
exactly,
bring out.
because I mean now. The return of drones is right here. Gross human rights abuse.
Well, for me, the final words that I would have to say in regard to this conversation on the return of drones and abductions in Uganda, I would have to say let's respect the Constitution of Uganda as the supreme law of the country. Yes, at the end of the day, the supreme law of the land, and no one is exempted from paying attention to what the Constitution says, right from the Fountain of Honor, who is the President of Uganda, down to the Vice President, down to the members of Parliament, down to the common Ugandan. Everyone is supposed to adhere to what the Constitution of Uganda says. So I hope we can let supremacy reign without it being interfered in one way or another.
Yeah.
Well, that's all we had for you this morning on our Twitter jabs. Yes, we've been discussing the return of drones and abductions. I've been with Agi Uwase. Coming up is the wellness, beauty and lifestyle segment. Of course, we'll be talking fashion and eyeglasses. And yeah, how do you keep it fashionable even when you know you have an eye defect or an eye problem? How do you keep fashion reigning even when you're not feeling your best? Well, that conversation is coming up, and of course that particular episode is for you out there who would benefit from it. This is Sunrise at Sea. Don't blink.